Hello everyone. In today's video I am going to quickly go over the back side of these notes from 1-3 piecewise functions. I'm going to skip the majority of what I did in class because I spent a lot of time on graphing these equations, these functions, but really you don't need to know how to do that. For your test and quiz, we're going to give you the graph. You just have to be able to answer these questions. So I want to spend more time on that and less focus on having you graph these functions. First off, if you have not watched my video over domain and range, or if you weren't in class for it, I strongly recommend you go watch that first. I'm going to go through these problems as if you already have that level of understanding because there's quite a bit here. Okay, so you don't have these graphs. I filled these in myself. So if you don't have this done, go ahead and pause the video and just draw in what I have, and then we will go through the rest of it together. So we need to find the intercepts, the domain, and the range. And since I have all this space over here, I'm going to write this over here. Intercepts. What we mean, x and y. We've got two types, x-intercepts and y-intercepts. So the x-intercept, reminder, this is where it crosses the x-axis. So we're looking for where it directly crosses. We're looking for a point on the x-axis. So the x-axis is our horizontal one here. So we just look and see, do we have a point here? Right here at 0. This point is 0, 0. That is our x-intercept. Y-intercept. Same concept. Where it crosses the y-axis. And when I say it, I'm referring to the line, the graph, whatever, where it crosses that. Y-intercept, y-axis, let's look on here. On our y-axis, do we have a point on here? That is also at 0, 0. Yes. This is the only time the x and y-intercept are going to be the same point, and that's because it's where the axes meet. Domain and range. I won't need much writing room, so I'm just going to fill those out down here. So if you watch my video or you were here in class, you know I use post-it notes to demonstrate the scanning of the graph. So domain, remember these are your x values. Range, we're looking at the y. And this is not the answer, but this is just the movement. For domain, we move from left to right. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh, I almost forgot. Reminder of your infinities. Moving left, we have negative infinity. Moving right, we have positive infinity. Moving up, we have positive infinity. Moving down, we have negative infinity. We're going to use these in a moment. So, starting on the left side of the graph, notice that when I move from left to right, again, I'm doing this, I'm only concerned about the x values. We are not looking at the y-axis, just the x values. When I move to the right, I've already hit an arrow that is pointing this way. This means that the graph keeps going to the left, so the farthest point out to the left is actually negative infinity. So that is where this graph starts. So for domain, we start at negative infinity. And infinities always have parentheses. So we're going to have parenthesis, negative infinity. We're starting all the way over here. Can't see it. Then we're going to move to the right and eventually get onto the graph. We're going to come here. We're following this continuous line. It looks great, but then here, there's a break in the graph. We've got a few problems. We have a point here and a point here for -2. And this hole here is a problem. Here's the good thing. This is on x equals -2, this line here. Notice I've also got a solid point here. This solid point cancels out the hole. So -2 does work right here. So we're going to pretend that's like not even a thing. So we're going to move on as if that didn't happen since it canceled it out. So we're still continuous, we're still solid, we're going to keep going, and we run into an arrow. Now, even though this arrow points upward, understand that it's moving up and to the right. So it is moving this direction to the right. So it's going to keep moving towards positive infinity. So it starts all the way out to the left, negative infinity, comes in and keeps going. Negative infinity to positive infinity. Now let's look at the range, the y values. This moves from bottom to top. We start at the bottom and we work our way up. So let's start at the bottom of the graph. When I move up, there's no graph here, no line, no points, nothing. It is just space. So I'm going to keep going until I reach the 6. And notice I've got my first point on the 6. Again, we're just looking at the y-axis now. So 6 is my starting point. Notice that it's got a solid dot. That means that 6 gets a bracket. So we started at 6, and then after that we got a nice solid line. We're going to follow it, see where it goes, more solid points. Keep going, and I could consider this hole here, but as you can see, the graph I'm currently looking at, it still continues. So this point cancels out the hole. It's like it wasn't even there. We're just going to cruise on by it, pretend it doesn't exist. And then we finally reach this arrow, and as you can see, this arrow is pointing up, and it's just going to keep going upward to infinity, to positive infinity. And that always gets a parenthesis. All right, so that is our domain and range for number 5. Let's continue on and do number 6. Same thing, I'm not going to show you how to graph it. Just take a moment and graph it if you need to do that yourself. Oh, I want to come back here real quick. I just realized I put positive 6 here. This should be a negative 6. Minor detail. Negative 6. I covered it up, so I wasn't even thinking. Carry on. So, if you need to pause and graph, go ahead and graph this. Now I'm going to move on. I'm going to talk about the intercepts first. And since I've already explained what the intercepts are up above, I'm just going to use the space I have over here. Intercepts, let's start with the x-intercept. This is where you literally look on the x-axis and ask, is there a point on the axis? No. The graph is completely above the axis, so we do not have any x-intercepts. Now let's look for y-intercepts. Again, we look at this y-axis and look and see if there's a point on the 12. This is our y-intercept. So our point, if I write it as a point, it's 0, 12. That's my y-intercept. Domain and range. First, I want to mark my infinities. Negative infinity on the left, positive on the right, positive infinity on the top, negative infinity on the bottom. Domain, these are the x values, range is the y. Domain moves from left to right. So I'm going to start on the left side of the graph. As I approach it, I notice the arrow, so I'm going to back up here. This arrow, while it's going up, it is also moving to the left. So it's going back this way. And back this way means negative infinity. So this graph actually starts way before what I'm looking at here. Parenthesis, always, negative infinity. Then we're going to get onto the graph and we're going to follow our solid line here. That's what we want to see. Then I get to my solid dot, which is inside of an open dot, so it cancels it out. So we're going to act like that didn't even happen. Follow it, it's still solid, and this arrow points up and to the right. So it's going to keep going to the right as well, towards positive infinity. So again, we have negative infinity to positive infinity. Most of your graphs in this class are going to have that domain, but don't always assume that is the case. Always look first. Range, we start at the bottom and we move up, bottom to top. Starting at the bottom of the graph. Now moving up the y-axis, we no longer care about the x. As we move up, notice that there's just space here. I'm not hitting any points or any lines, so there's no graph. Let's just keep moving till we get to our closed dot and open dot situation. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but these are on 7 on the y-axis. I drew these a little big. So they start at 7, and because I've got that closed dot, and it's canceling out the open dot, so we don't care about the open dot anymore, just the closed. We're starting at 7. And since it has a closed dot there, it gets its bracket. Start at 7, and we're going to work our way up. Both of these lines are completely solid, exactly as they should be. They are filled in, they're continuous. And when I reach the top, they are both going different directions, but they're both heading upward, meaning they are going towards infinity. Eventually, they're going to get to it. So this just goes up into infinity with a parenthesis as always. So there's my range. All right, that's all I have for this video. Please make sure that you do the homework, especially the graph problems. You're definitely going to need the extra help on that to prepare for your test. If you have any additional questions over these problems or over the homework that goes with this set of notes, please let me know either via email or in person. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.